As you can see in that video, today we are talking about time travel and flux capacitors. No, of course, I'm kidding. Today we continue our series, Circles, where we've been making the case that circles are better than rows. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, we love rows. We love what happens on Sunday as we gather in rows and celebrate God. But as important as it is, we believe circles, small groups, are even better because there's stuff that happens in a circle that just can't happen in a row. I mean, true belonging, that happens in a circle. You can be known and know people. Praying for one another happens in a circle. Prayers that are personal and heartfelt. Real care and accountability, it happens in a circle. Quick show of hands. How many have heard the term circle of influence? Yeah, they don't call it row of influence. No, it's a circle. Now, some of you may not know this, but when we started community, we actually started in circles before we started in rows. As a matter of fact, we had circles or, small groups before we had people. And it's really hard to form circles without people. Ever try to join hands with yourself for prayer? Yeah, it's kind of hard to do. But think about some of the most memorable and meaningful moments in your own life. I think about my family sitting around a kitchen table when I was a kid. Many of the conversations we had and the fun times we shared were around that table. It was a circle. I think about gathering around a campfire at church camp when I was in my teens, singing songs and being challenged to give my life to following Jesus. Yeah, it was a circle. I even think about my college days, sitting in a dorm room, dreaming of what it would look like to start a church for people who didn't necessarily like going to church. It was a circle. I think about, the life change that has happened in my own small group over the past 18 months where 7 or 8 people have decided to follow Jesus. It was a circle, not a row. Yes, circles are better than rows. And God's intention has always been for us to experience His blessings in community. No, we were never meant to live life alone, to follow God by ourselves. Instead, it has always been God's desire and design for us to experience His blessings in community. Now, we actually see this intention all the way back in Genesis 12, near the very beginning. As God formed the first group of people who would become known as the people of God, the Israelites, He set a man named Abraham apart and tells him that He's going to bless him and his descendants in a major way. And here's how it reads. I'm going to read from Genesis chapter 12. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you." Now, let's stop right there, okay? You see, God's blessing here is given to a group of people, a nation that God will create from Abraham's descendants. Now, this blessing wasn't meant for an individual, not just one person, but for a community of people who would become known as the people of God. And then if you fast forward to today, see, God offers us the same blessing that He promised to Abraham, that He will bless us as the people of God. Now, if you're in a small group, you've probably already experienced some of these blessings. I've had conversations, I know, with many of you about your small groups and how meaningful they are to you. You've told me about the life change you've experienced, the friendships you've made, the adventures you've shared together as a group. So many of you are already experiencing the blessings God promises through your small group. And I can tell you something that has sort of surprised me about living in the city. For whatever reason, there seems to be an even greater sense of loneliness in the city. There's something about being around hundreds, if even thousands of people all the time. I literally walk out my door and immediately see people everywhere, but know so few of them. And that can result in what one author called a kind of crowded loneliness, this experience of, being around a lot of people, but still feeling quite alone. And this feeling has caused me to rely on and love even more the circle of friends I have made in my small group. And today we're going to focus on a particularly challenging opportunity that every small group shares. You see, the people of God, they're not blessed just to be blessed. Let me say that again. The people of God aren't just blessed to be blessed. We are blessed to be a blessing. When God said to Abram, "I will bless you," He didn't stop there. He went on to say this, "You will be a blessing. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you." You see, God blesses His people so that they can be a blessing. He doesn't just bless us for our own enjoyment, though He certainly wants us to enjoy the blessing. We are blessed. Why? So that we can be that's right, blessing. Tell you what, turn to somebody near you and say, you are blessed to be a blessing. And here's what this means for our circles. Okay? Your circle, your small group, doesn't exist just as something for you to consume. Your circle is meant to be a conduit to bring God's blessings to the world. And that's why our groups are not closed. That's why we want our groups to always be expanding. That's why we always make room for just one more person. But I know sometimes it's easier said than done. I mean, sometimes we come to love our group so much that we want to kind of keep that group to ourselves. You know, we're afraid that if anything changes, if the circle expands, then somehow like the magic will be lost. And so we can develop a sort of scarcity mindset, and we get it into our head that if we include others, somehow there won't be any left for me. Now, why we do this with our groups, I can't quite figure out. I mean, we don't do that with other great discoveries, right? I mean, like restaurants. I mean, we discover a new restaurant. We can't wait to tell people about it. I mean, we tweet about it, take pictures, post them to Instagram. I mean, we even search for the right filter just to make the entree look perfect in the picture. Or how about a great supermarket? I mean, remember when Mariano's first opened, or Trader Joe's, or Whole Foods? I mean, we couldn't wait to tell everybody about it. But when it comes to like our small group, we sometimes kind of want to keep it to ourselves, don't we? And here's the thing. Every single one of us at one time or another were once the outsider who was welcomed into that circle. And yet we're still hesitant to sometimes invite others. And we start having thoughts like, well, I might not feel comfortable talking if new people join, or, we need time to get to know the people we already have. Or well, if we get too many people, we'll have to start a new group and I'll lose my friends. And those are valid feelings. I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't feel that way, because frankly, I've had seasons where I felt the same way. I told you about how much I love my group. Well, our group was so good, lots of people wanted to be included. That's what happens when something is good. Others want to be a part of it. You want to keep your group from expanding? Just make it a really bad experience for everybody. No snacks, tell people the wrong starting time. That's just a couple ideas. My group expanded as far as we could until we had to start a new group. So I left that group to start a new one. So yeah, I miss my old group. So see, we've got to challenge one another when it comes to these hesitations, because we are not blessed simply to be blessed. We are blessed to be a blessing. One more story to illustrate what I'm talking about. This story is from the New Testament. It's about a guy who was challenged to expand his circle. Peter was one of the 12 in Jesus' inner circle. Now, imagine if that group had never expanded, never included more than just the 12. Yeah, heaven would be a very lonely place, wouldn't it? Well, after Jesus dies, comes back to life, and returns to his Father, the Holy Spirit comes upon Peter and the others in that circle of 12. Thousands of people find their way back to God. It's the beginning of the church, the new people of God. And the story of Jesus and the life that he offers, it begins to spread like crazy. But there's something important to understand about Peter and his circle of friends. Okay, up to this point, the new people of God all came from the old people of God, meaning that these new Christ followers were also descendants of Abraham. They were Israelites. So one day Peter's on the roof of a home, spending some quiet time in prayer, when God gives him a vision. And in this vision, he sees a sheet coming down from heaven that's filled with all sorts of animals, reptiles, birds, that law-abiding Jewish people would have nothing to do with. They were considered completely untouchable. You see, unlike the Gentiles in that day, Jewish people were not allowed to have anything to do with these kind of foods. Well, then Peter hears a voice telling him that these foods are no longer unclean. They're okay. The voice even tells him to eat these foods. Now, first, Peter can't believe what he's hearing, but the voice from God says to him, Peter, do not call anything impure that God has made clean. 3 times Peter sees this vision and hears the voice before it's taken away. And then he's left to ponder what this means. But while he's lost in thought, 3 men come knocking on his door. They go to Peter and say, Peter, no, we've been sent by Cornelius, a centurion, and he had this vision where an angel told him to send for you so that he and his family could hear what you have to say. Now you might think, well, of course Peter would go. He's on a mission to expand his circle, to help more people find their way back to God. But Peter had all sorts of reasons to hesitate. For one, Cornelius was not an Israelite. He'd never been part of the people of God's circle before. Even more, he was a Roman, part of the empire that was oppressing Peter's very own people. And perhaps Peter's greatest hesitation was that for centuries, any contact with Gentiles was strictly prohibited by Jewish law. Yet in spite of these hesitations, and because of this vision from God, Peter goes with them, and as he enters Cornelius' house, he says to them this. He says, "You are well aware that it is against our law for a Jew to associate with or visit a Gentile. But God has shown me that I should not call anyone impure or unclean. So when I was sent for, I came without raising any objection." Now, what I love about this story is that there was absolutely nothing that would keep Peter from expanding his circle. Nothing. So I got to ask you, what's keeping you from expanding your circle? I love what I heard last week when someone said or asked us to think about how different your life could have been if, someone had expanded their circle to include you. Maybe when you were a little kid or a teen or a young adult. Imagine the difference it could have made for your dad or your mom, if someone would have invited them into their circle. You see, you can make that difference for someone else when you include them in your circle. When you expand your circle to include others, you're not just helping them make new friends. You're giving them the chance to meet Jesus and experience a love they won't find anywhere else, a hope that will get them through life's most difficult circumstances, and a purpose that will bring new meaning to their life. And how timely is this story for this weekend when we celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Of course, Dr. King's dream was a society where every circle would be open to every person, where each person would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. A vision where all of God's children would be able to join together, hand in hand, live together in circles of freedom and justice. Dr. King's dream is God's dream. It's the same vision for inclusiveness that God gave to Peter and God gave to us. Our world, it seems so full of closed circles, doesn't it? People join in hands, forming circles, but so often the hands are all the same color or from the same political party or the same socioeconomic group. But you see, we have the opportunity to be the people of God as the people of God were meant to be, including all people into our circle. Cornelius and everybody in his household found their way back to God and were baptized. Yeah, they were the first non-Jewish people to become part of the people of God. You could make a case that if Peter hadn't crossed that barrier and expanded his circle, none of us here who are not Jewish would have ever had the opportunity to find our way back to God in Jesus. You see, as followers of Jesus, we have been blessed to be a blessing. Yeah, we're called to expand our circles so that more and more people can find their way back to God. And so let me ask you, who is God asking you to bless? Who is the person or group of people you will invite to join your circle, to become part of your small group? Maybe it's a person or a group of people who are not like you. Here at Community, we encourage everyone to engage in 5 practices that can help us be a blessing. And because we are creatively brilliant, those practices form an acrostic that spells bless, B-L-E-S-S. Now, the B stands for begin with prayer. Did you notice that it was during Peter's daily time of prayer when he received his vision from God? See, we too got to begin each day in prayer, asking God to lead us in expanding our circles. Here's what it looks like for me. In my journal, I actually type my journal on my laptop, but I type in the word bless. And in the names of some people who I believe God is wanting me to include in my circle, wanting me to bless, come right below that. And right now there's people with names like Dave and Anna, Tim and Jackie, Steve and Doug. They're on my list. Yeah, we begin with prayer. The L then is for listen. L is for listen. Can you imagine, just imagine the ground we could gain for the kingdom if we would just get better at listening? Just think about the change we would see in our world if instead of vocalizing our differences on Facebook or Twitter, we would just listen, listen to people's hopes and dreams, their struggles, their fears. God, help us to bless others as we listen to them. So we begin with prayer, we listen, and then the E stands for eat. Sharing a meal and asking Jesus to be there is the secret recipe for experiencing community. Jesus ate meals with people all the time. I mean, eating with someone is like putting salt on food. You're giving that relationship flavor. You're helping it to taste even better. And we all know that something special happens when we share a meal. Expand your circle by sharing a meal. Then the first S is for serve. As you pray, you listen and eat and then build relationships with those outside your circle, it's going to become apparent how you can serve them. You know, it might be someone who's adjusting to living in a new area. Yeah, invite them to your small group, to your circle. It could be someone who's in a tight spot financially. Yeah, join together as a small group to meet that need. It could be a new mom or a dad who's struggling as a new parent. Connect them with other parents. See, this first S is all about recognizing the real needs in people's lives and looking for ways you and your circle, your group, could meet those needs. And then finally, we have the last S, which stands for story. And when the time is right, and I think it will be apparent, usually they'll ask, and you can begin to tell your story of finding your way back to God. Be honest with your struggles. You know, the challenges you've faced, the doubts you've had along the way. Share how your circle, your small group, has helped you walk that path. See, these blessed practices are simple, but they can be absolutely life-changing. So here's the question. Who is God calling you to bless? I mean, who is the person or group of people you will invite into your circle? Yeah, how is God challenging you to expand your circle? Because you see, circles are better than rows. Not just because of the blessings they bring to our own lives, but because our circles can be a conduit to bring God's blessings to the world. I mean, just imagine if everyone in your neighborhood, everyone in our city, was invited into a circle. Imagine the healing, the hope, the peace that would come to our families, our neighborhoods, our cities, and even our world.